Warning, this show contains childish adult content and is intended for immature, mature audiences. Listener discretion is advised. The views spoken are ours and ours alone, not those of any other bugger. If you're easily offended, we strongly suggest finding another podcast. Everybody neat and pretty, then on with the show.
And welcome to another edition of Dis After Dark. I am Nick, and this evening, or this afternoon, or this morning, whatever time you're listening to us, because that's the joys of podcasting, we have with us the following people. We have Mr. Paul Washington.
Hello.
We have Mr. Chris Ripley.
Hello.
We have Mr. Paul Dolan.
Good evening.
Saving the best for last, of course, Miss Amanda, aka BostonWhite.
Hi.
And there is no Craig, so if you love Craig more than you love us and you want to switch off, now would be a good time to do so. If I didn't tell you that we had a mega star of a guest, is that selling him short even? I don't know, but we are joined by a very special guest. So if you'd like to introduce yourself to us, please.
Hi, my name's Ron Schneider. And probably best known for being the original Dreamfinder at Epcot Center, but I've been in theme parks for 40 years, and I've got quite a history with them, and just love talking about it.
Brilliant. So I'm sure there'll be lots of people listening that will know some of Ron's story. As well as that, there'll be people, of course, that don't necessarily know that. So we are going to talk about that in just a little bit. But first of all, we do always start the show, I forgot to mention this to Ron, by me asking the question, what is everybody drinking? Any takers to shout out first?
I've got a strawberry watermelon mixed powdered drink that I'm going through. Nothing strong.
Now, I've been doing this podcast for, if Craig was on the show, he'd be able to tell me this now, but it's got to be about 4 years or so, maybe 5 years. That is the first time the guest has answered before anybody else. I love it. You have to coax this out of people most of the time. That's brilliant. So, that's a soft drink, I take it. That's not an alcoholic
that's exactly
beverage.
What it is, yeah.
Good stuff. Good stuff. I'm actually on the soft stuff myself tonight. I've just got some cherry. It goes open in the fridge. I've just got a little bit left of cherry Pepsi Max, which is probably really flat now actually, because it's been open a couple of days. But never mind. Mr. Washington, what are you after?
Orange squash.
Very
exciting.
Nothing but exciting on this show tonight. And Mr. Ripley?
I'm on the Evian.
Evian?
Yeah.
Oh, I like Roxy music.
Other mineral waters are available.
Yeah, with varying degrees of taste in this. What's that about? I mean, surely water should, like bottled water should just taste like bottled water, but it doesn't, does it?
They have water sommeliers now.
Do they really?
In London, yeah.
You'll probably hear a lot tonight about the crazy stuff we do in England, other than just leaving Europe. I always, talking about strange jobs like that, I always wanted, I don't even know if this is a job, but I thought an ideal job for me would be to name the shades of paint. Because they're so random, aren't they? Like, none of it makes sense.
The toughest part of that job would be coming up with so many synonyms for white.
Apple Peruvian white. What's that? Who knows what that is? No one knows what that is. Or lime mint apple. What? That's nothing. That's just three words you stuck together. That makes no sense. Amanda?
I'm wild tonight. I'm having some mango and raspberry cider.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, so you guys are my designated drivers tonight.
We're all going to be like, it's going to be the fight about who drives you home, which sounds a lot more sinister than it is actually, because we've seen Amanda's fella, and no one's going to mess with him. Mr. Dolan, what about yourself?
He's lent on that pause button again, isn't he?
Have you muted yourself again, Mr. D?
Either that or he's already under the table.
Yeah, it's something about technology. Something about technology. I don't know. Right. Well, I'm sure he will tell us once he can hear us or once his microphone's working. I'm sure he'll be able to tell us what he's drinking. However, we've already established, or just leave the conversation. I'll invite him back in a second. He must be on a naughty step. Right. So we've already established. Well, you mentioned in your introduction there about your original role as a Dreamfinder. Now, I've got to be completely honest. I never went to Disney World until 2007. So my knowledge of Figment, in terms of what I've experienced with my own self, is the second incarnation of that ride, the Journey into Imagination, which I know is slightly different. So I am aware of the history of the ride to some degree, but there are people. Well, there would have been people on this recording if they didn't leave the call, who did experience the original version with yourself. But for those people that are like me, not aware of how the attraction started and your connection, would you just tell us a little bit about that, please?
I'd be delighted. When Epcot originally opened, it was a very different kind of park. It was what they called an inspirational park. It wasn't so much about entertainment like Magic Kingdom. It was more about communicating with people and talking to them about your place in the world. So we have the Future World, had a series of pavilions that dealt with different aspects of life on the planet. Energy, transportation, under the seas, and one of those was the Journey into Imagination, because imagination is where everything else comes from. And there was, in this park, no Mickey Mouse, no Donald Duck, no Goofy. It was a brave thing for the Imagineers to do, and for the top management of Disney to do, to agree to open a park that was not going to have any Mickey Mouse in it. The only characters that there were, figurehead characters for Epcot Center, were the hosts of the Journey into Imagination, which was this wonderful ride. It had more special effects in it than all of Walt Disney World did when it opened in '71.
Wow.
And it was a story of this crazy old guy called the Dreamfinder. And he would, at the top of the ride, he's flying through the air in his dream-catching machine, collecting sparks of inspiration. And out of these sparks of inspiration, he creates his sidekick, which I think everybody's pretty much familiar with, Figment, little purple dragon. And together, Figment and the Dreamfinder take off to the different realms of creativity, literature, art, science, technology, and they use the sparks they collected in the first scene to create new and wonderful things in those different realms. And in this way, the audience on the ride learns about the process of imagination. And then when you come off the ride, there we are. Dreamfinder's walking around with Figment tucked under his arm, and we're posing for pictures, and you can find a lot of pictures of Dreamfinder and Figment out there. The ride closed in 1998 and reopened about a year later without Dreamfinder and without Figment, and the characters were so beloved, the original ride was so beloved, that there was a big furor, so they closed that ride after about a year, and did another version of the same one that had Figment in it, but Figment no longer had the Dreamfinder with him. He no longer was a charming and lovable character. He was more of a pest, like he is now. And ever since then, people have been carrying on about bring back Dreamfinder and Figment. When I was working at Disneyland in the Golden Horseshoe Review, doing this Wild West Saloon show as a comic there. And when I saw a sketch of Dreamfinder and Figment before Epcot opened, and I realized that's something I wanted to do. So I got in touch with the people who were responsible and got myself the job as being the first person to portray the Dreamfinder at the pavilion. And so I walked around in this outfit with a false beard, wig, and mustache, a beautiful blue tailcoat, and this purple dragon on my arm that the two of us went out, entertained people, and kind of played creatively with them to expand on the themes that were present in the ride and that are present in Epcot Center, about drawing out people's creativity and giving them an idea of how that works in the world. And that's the short answer.
Is it slightly wrong of me to be disappointed that you had a false beard? Am I the only one?
As a matter of fact, when I got the job, I had a beard. I have a beard now. or I did until just recently. And the thing about that is the Dreamfinder's beard was very full and beautifully curled. And if I had used a real beard, I would have had to sleep every night in curlers on my face, which is no way to go around. So, no, I didn't mind the false beard at all. The false beard actually had a couple of elastic straps, so I didn't have to glue it on. It just went up underneath the wig. I had to glue the mustache on, though. But the other thing about wearing a false beard is that freed me up to do other things for the company. So I was doing convention shows and playing different characters and doing other work for the company that I couldn't have done if I'd just looked like the Dreamfinder.
It's a valid point. I mean, going back to your comment about curlers, wearing curlers. Now, I don't know, because some of us know the areas where we all come from or where we still reside now. But I come from a place in England called Essex, and it's quite common, actually. And in fact, joking aside, last weekend, to see a woman walking around the town centre with curlers in her hair. Not in a beard, mind you. So, I don't know. Times have changed, but again, I understand it would restrict you to doing other things. So maybe it was best it was a false beard, actually. But how long were you doing that role for?
I was there for the first 5 years of Epcot Center, so I was there from the opening in 1982 till about May of 1987.
Okay. And before we deviate off a little bit, you have written a book about this experience, haven't you?
Well, it's about my entire... it's a 40-year memoir about my career in theme parks. It's called From Dreamer to Dreamfinder, A Life and Lessons Learned in 40 Years Behind a Name Tag. And it's a combination of a memoir about the different jobs I've had and also a textbook about how to write and perform and produce themed entertainment, the principles behind it. Because as I grew up going to the parks and I'm such a fan, I would see these shows that just people didn't obviously know how to write for the parks, how the audience's minds work, and I've learned a lot through the years. So I set that forth in the book. And it's up on Amazon and BNN, and it's published by Bamboo Forest Publishing, and you can go to their webpage, and if you order it there, they'll send you an autographed copy.
Wow. I do like. There's something about an autographed copy. I do have an autographed copy of a book we'll be discussing later, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Won't we, Mr. Ripley? Without jumping the gun too much.
Yeah.
But yeah, there is something about having a signed book, and also this is a question I've asked other people as well. So because I think it's relevant. Obviously, you can buy your book at these other outlets, as you mentioned. But is it better for you commercially to buy direct from the publisher?
I'm not sure, actually. I know that the book is quite a bit cheaper if you order it on Amazon.
Yeah, but look, we're not interested. We're not interested in saving people money. I'm interested in putting dollars in your pocket.
Probably it's better for me if you order through Bamboo Forest Publishing, but save quite a bit of money. And also at Amazon, they've got...
Oh, sorry, we had a bit of a technical dip there. So you were saying about Amazon?
Oh, Nick?
Yep, I think it's just you and me.
No, I'm here.
I'm back.
I'm here.
I don't know. What's going on?
Sorry, guys. I completely lost the blooming internet.
You lost the internet?
I did, yeah.
Oh, well,
yeah,
then crazy.
Thank God you found it.
I had to reboot the router.
Well, as I was saying, there's on Amazon, you can also get the digital copy of the book, and you can get the audio book, which is 9 hours of me talking.
9 hours. Now,
yes.
I was actually reading. This goes off on a tangent. Which can you believe? Are we surprised that I'm about to go off on a tangent? No, of course we're not. That's what I normally do. I was reading about an actor called Jim Dow, who's obviously quite familiar with Disney audiences in the original Pete's Dragon, i.e. the one that doesn't look like a load of crap. But he does the audiobooks in America for Harry Potter.
For Harry Potter.
Now, in the UK, we have Stephen Fry do the audiobooks, don't we?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
Do you?
Yeah.
Well, I actually don't know where I'm going with this. So if you want to tell everyone else where I'm going with it, I'll appreciate it. No, I don't know.
Does it include Columbus?
No.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. No, I see where you was going with that. No, I wasn't actually.
Or
no,
girls, or nurse, or doctor, or a game doctor?
No, there was no carry on. I wasn't going to carry on with it, but I saw a video of him a reading. I think it might have been when they launched the last Harry Potter book, and so they did like I don't know if it was a signing as such, but he was doing a reading in a bookshop in front of an audience, and it was mesmerising. Watched him do all the different voices.
Mm-hmm.
That's what got me. So my question to you, having done a 9-hour audio recording of your book, did you do any different voices during it, or was it just your voice the whole way through?
It was just my voice. Yeah, the only of the voice I did was the Dreamfinder voice, which I just dropped in when it was appropriate.
Which I think it's quite infectious, isn't it? Actually.
Jumping ahead, Ron. Have you got your Walt Disney voice sorted yet?
That's an interesting question. We should tell the people out there that I'm also I've been working on a film called The Further Adventures of Walt's Frozen Head.
Yes. Now,
in which I'm playing the title role.
Now we actually had on, and he's going to kill me now because I've forgotten what his name is.
Ben Lancaster.
Yes, of course, Ben. We had him on when he did the first Kickstarter, I think. It was either the first or second Kickstarter. No, I think it was the first Kickstarter, wasn't it?
First one, I think.
Yeah.
We all signed up, didn't we?
We did. We all actually. It's the first time we've all contributed to the same Kickstarter, actually. Mm-hmm. It's a shame it wasn't before we had the new members of the team, because then there'd have been even more people to have contributed. But no,
you'll be relieved to know that the second Kickstarter it wraps up in a couple hours, and we're about $1,000 short. So when we hang up here, feel free to kick in.
Right. Okay. No problem. We'll put the feeders out on the Facebooks and the Twitters, because I mean it's. I mean he was telling us about the film. So what was it about? Must have been about a year and a half ago now, maybe.
Yeah.
Or so.
Yeah, it must be.
It was brilliant. It captured our imagination, and actually seeing some of the rushes from it, it is brilliant. But obviously the thing that they've not been able to show so far is, as you've just said, your contribution to it as the voice of Walt, and I assume as well we'll see your face as well.
Oh yeah. When they shot the film, they had this metal canister that contains Walt's head, and they put a green card in there so that they could later on map Walt Disney's head into it. And then they had this bag they were carrying around the Magic Kingdom when they were taking Walt around, and that also had a green card in it, so when they wanted to, they could put Walt's head in it. They just didn't have a Walt Disney yet. And it was a couple of months ago, Ben Lancaster got in touch with me and asked me if I'd be interested in playing the role, so I turned in a video audition, and over the last 2 weekends, we shot all of my footage, and they've started inserting it into the footage that they already had. And this will be the beginning of the post-production process. Like I say, we're having a Kickstarter right now to help us get a musical score and color correction and all the different elements they need to really polish the film up. But as far as a Walt Disney voice is concerned, I was thinking about that. I spent a lot of time listening to Walt. I spent a lot of time listening to Tom Hanks, who I thought did a wonderful job of. Well, no, he didn't exactly sound like Walt Disney. He had that kind of attitude that I wanted to capture. But then when I shaved off my beard a couple weeks ago and got a look in the mirror and was surprised at how much I already looked like Walt. So then I went we had a makeup test. We had a wonderful professional makeup artist come in, and she worked on me for about an hour and a half. I had to alter my hairline and dress me up, and it just worked. It just completely worked. I looked like Walt. Surprised the hell out of me. And so in working in the shoot over the last couple of weekends, I came to the realization that it wasn't as important for me to sound like Walt as it was for me to react as Walt would after 40 years in hibernation.
Yeah.
We're not trying to recreate what Walt was in 1966. We're trying to show you what Walt Disney would be like in 2016 if he was revived every year for 3 days a year.
Yeah.
And so I pretty much I kind of made a little more gruff, my voice a little more gruff, as if I'd been smoking 2 packs a day, and I just reacted to the things that happened in the story in a natural way, and I let the look of the character carry it. And everyone that's seen pictures of what I look like have been amazed that it's even me.
Did you do your own stunts, Ron?
Pardon?
Did you do your own stunts as Walt's head?
Yes, I did my own stunts. I cut off my own head and put it in the case there, and they carried it around for a while, and I sat off to the side just waiting for my next cross.
Amazing.
Yeah, because Ben did talk about because the film, the principal filming had been done when the Kickstarter was going on, so he was talking to us about how he'd gone around the parks. He told us a few hairy stories of when the jig was almost up, as it were. A few times they almost got caught. So it was very entertaining to hear about that, and the holdall that's obviously the main prop in the film as well. So that's great. What's the ETA on that? Is it scheduled to come out early next year? Is that right? I can't remember now.
They just swallowed hard and decided to announce that the film there's going to be the premiere of the film will be on December 3rd of this year.
Wow.
They're not talking about a general release until spring of 2017.
Yeah.
But they seem to think that all the elements will be ready to show it to the backers, the Kickstarter people, and send them at least a portion of the film around December 3rd.
Mm. I hope our invitation to the premiere has our plane tickets and hotel accommodation as well. It's a little bit far to travel, from England.
All the more reason you should contribute to this Kickstarter.
I tell you what, he's a born salesman, isn't he? As well as everything else he's ever done. Clearly a born salesman. Excellent.
Well, I was assuming between Paul, Chris, and Amanda they were going to knock up that $1,000 by the end of the show, but hey, I might be wrong there.
Has anyone got Craig's credit card details? I'm sure there's some money in the pot from our sponsors. So probably not enough to contribute to that fully, but you never know. Excellent. Well, actually, speaking of sponsors, I suppose we actually better mention the first of our sponsors, and I'm going to go over to you, Mr. Ripley. We won't talk about the other thing, but we'll talk about the thing that you are involved in, and he's doing very, very, very well at the moment, flying up the iTunes charts.
Scare Zone, the podcast with Logan Seculo and Scotty Too Hotty and I. Big shout out to Scare Zone. We've just done a huge episode with Mike Aiello that almost went viral. We couldn't believe it. And we've got interviews in the bag. We're just lining up some. If you thought Mike Aiello was A1, and he is A1. We found AAA1 and AAAA1 as well.
Ooh.
Yeah,
I didn't think we were talking about me.
I get them in the studio. So
I didn't think we were talking about me coming on the show, because that's quite a big hint. There's me blowing my trumpet. But yeah, the download figures for your episode, when did it come out? Last Friday, was it? Last Thursday?
It was. Tuesday or Wednesday this week.
Yeah, and it seems to have done great guns. So congratulations on that.
I think it was just the synergy. We'd sort of spoke to Mike ahead of the time, and we knew when Halloween Horror Nights was going to release a load of information. So we kind of had it so we would release right at the cusp, and then we would sort of ride that wave of interest, basically.
I think it was good to kind of to do that before any other hopefuls tried to do a similar kind of stunt.
No comment.
On fleek.
I plead the fifth.
On fleek. So that's Scare Zone, which you can find on iTunes, and where else?
Google Play. TuneIn?
What's
the other one? No, not TuneIn. Stitcher.
Stitcher. Yes, of course,
Yeah.
Stitcher. Good old Stitcher. So there you go. So that's the Scare Zone podcast. Now, Ron, I think that's probably a good introduction of your kind of your most famous kind of work, I suppose. Within the Dreamfinder, and a bit more about yourself. But we know you've done a load of these shows, so we don't want to just spend the whole time talking about that kind of stuff. So I'm going to talk about one more thing to do within that kind of world of the Dreamfinder and Epcot and Figment, and then we'll kind of move on. So, what were your thoughts when they changed the ride the first time, and then obviously the second time as well? What were your initial thoughts when you heard about it and when you experienced it?
I was disappointed, very disappointed that they got rid of the characters completely, and even more disappointed when I got to ride the new version of the ride. This was the reason they did it. I finally understand is because there's the Kodak contract they had with Kodak that the ride would be renovated every 10 years. But at this point, it had already been running for 16 years.
Right.
And they shut it down, and the plans, whatever plans they had, got nickeled and dimed and cut back. And what they wound up was just a series of special effects on a ride that had no through line and had no particular thought behind it. I think one of the reasons Dreamfinder and Figment have lasted in people's memories, the people that knew them, and have endured, is because of the wonderful job that Tony Baxter and the Imagineers did in creating the original story, creating the identification with Dreamfinder and Figment. That you were there when Dreamfinder created Figment, and the characters were so endearing, and the concepts that were presented were so powerful. And that's why the characters have lasted. The rides that have replaced it have not had any of that. They've just been special effects and cheap gags. And as a result, when they go through it, it has absolutely no emotional impact. And it's just been a constant disappointment for me.
Cheap gags and Eric Idle. I never thought I'd hear the two things together.
You know how Eric Idle got into this?
Go on.
They were doing when they replaced Captain EO with Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, or Honey, I Shrunk the Audience.
That's right, yeah. And he was in that, yep.
Well, they didn't have a star for that. They were getting ready to shoot, and they didn't have someone to host it, to play the guy who was the head of the Imagination Institute. Michael Eisner was out in Hollywood having dinner one night, and he looks across the restaurant, and there's the guy.
Eric Idle.
Eric Idle.
Yep.
He's across the room. And so Eisner goes over and says, "Listen, what are you doing tomorrow?" He says, "I got nothing on." He says, "Well, I want you to be in this film." And so Eric Idle goes down to Disney, having no idea what they're going to do. And they shot the film, because if you remember the film, or if you ever saw the film, it was done in one take. And they shot the thing with Eric Idle that day. And suddenly he became head of the Imagination Institute. When they decided to put in the new ride, they used Eric Idle as well. And I love Eric Idle and all the Pythons, but they didn't give him anything to work with here.
It's quite funny actually, because I didn't actually put I put the two together in the fact that I knew Eric Idle did Honey, I Shrunk the Audience, because my home park, I suppose our home park really is Disneyland Paris in terms of distance, and so when Captain EO closed in Disneyland Paris, we got Honey, I Shrunk the Audience. Captain EO didn't last anywhere near as long as it did elsewhere, because obviously Disneyland Paris only opened in 1992. But obviously I was aware of that. But the whole pre-show stuff about the Imagination Centre and everything like that didn't really make any sense, because we didn't have anything else with that. We just had the Captain EO cinema, really. We didn't have anything to kind of go along with it. So that whole kind of backstory, if you want to call it, didn't really make much sense. And by the time when I first went to Florida, it's 2007, Honey, I Shrunk the Audience was still on, but because I didn't actually care for the ride, I didn't go and see it again. And And so again, didn't really put the two things together, except for I said I knew that Eric Idle was in Honey I Shrunk the Audience, but that makes much more sense now because essentially he was the head person of that whole area, which hosted the two rides.
Nick, it's only a model.
I've got it. Yeah, it's a funny one, but yeah, I didn't really appreciate Honey I Shrunk the Audience. And the thing is, it's different for people. So when Mr. D, you might have heard dip in and out of this conversation, but did you experience the original attraction?
No,
Dreamfinder. So you didn't either. Okay.
No, in fact, when exactly did the Dreamfinder stop at Epcot? It was 98, wasn't it?
98, yeah.
But do you remember when in 98? Because 98 was the first year that we went to Walt Disney World, but it was October 98. So I think I don't remember Dreamfinder being there. I think we must have just missed that.
Oh, okay.
Sounds about right, yeah.
Yeah,
So
that and Horizons, actually, because I think Horizons shot the same year, I think. I think that was also in 98. So we missed a couple of classic things there.
Yeah, I think Mr. Boniface is the only one that did, and he's still in was a Russian gulag or something. God knows where he is. Whoa, hang on.
Whoa.
Hang on, you didn't mention this. So you experienced both rides.
Yeah, well, I've experienced all three types of it.
Wow.
And I feel you, Ron. I'm disappointed now. There's no emotional connection at all anymore, and I don't like it anymore.
Yeah.
I loved it. Obviously, I was a lot younger when Dreamfinder was there. I was 8 when Dreamfinder went, but I absolutely loved that ride so much. And then when I went back and Figment wasn't there, and Figment was slightly there, but Dreamfinder wasn't, I was heartbroken. I was so upset by it. And then I hadn't been on it again until last year, and it devastates me to go on it because it's just not the same.
And this is someone that goes to the park every year.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I was just so upset that I just didn't want to go on it anymore. And I feel like I know that people say all the time, oh, what if we could bring Dreamfinder back? And I don't think it would work now. Because I feel like whoever they brought back, if it wasn't you, Ron, they wouldn't get it.
Well, I think that, I thank you for that. There were a lot of fellows who played the Dreamfinder. Everybody had their own kind of take on it. One fella, Steve Taylor, lasted for 15 years, and he has the scars to prove it. But I agree about being leery about bringing back the Dreamfinder because they did such a lousy job of bringing back Figment. If Tony Baxter or any of his proteges could be used to develop a new ride that brought Dreamfinder back, something that built on the same philosophy and the same mission that the original ride had, I think it could be done and done very well. But I'm very skeptical about that.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely.
Because I've got to be honest, that's the thing. I mean, as I said, experiencing the only version I've experienced as a Amanda, and I think everyone else has on here as well tonight, is the version you experienced last year. And I knew that Figment was an iconic character before I went to Disney World. But going on that ride, and I think you summed it up the best earlier on when you said about him being more of a pest. That's exactly... I saw him as someone annoying, and I thought, how can this character be so beloved if he's such a pain in the ass?
It's a question of how he's treated. Dreamfinder creates Figment in the original ride and cherishes him, and carries him through the attraction and finds him exciting and fun to be with, and there's a mutual respect and love there. But at the very beginning of the current version of the ride, Figment pops up, and Eric Idle looks at him and goes, "What are you doing here? Go away." And when you do that to any character, the character's going to come off as a pest. Look at Empire Strikes Back. Everybody treats C-3PO like a pest, says, "Shut up, go away." He's beloved in the first film. But in the second film, same character, and everybody thought he was a pest, simply because of the way he was treated.
I think
Exactly.
though, Ron, it's a great point, but I think had we known that eventually we'd meet Jar Jar Binks, no one would have treated C-3PO that way, no matter how annoying he was, because they knew what was going to be coming round the corner. Right,
It's all relative.
Chris, you said to me that you had a couple of questions you wanted to ask.
Yeah, just sort of changing the subject very quickly. I believe you had a bit of a hand in making the Monsters Inc. laugh floor attraction.
I was one of the opening crew on that show back in when it opened up in I think 2006, and I was there for 2.5 years. Yeah.
Wow. I was just going to say, is there any particular stories or anything that of note you could tell us about that attraction?
We were hired in. They were supposed to start training us in the beginning of November, and the ride was supposed to open roughly 5 months later. We were going to use that time in there to work on the show system, to work on the scripts, and to put everything together. They hired 20 of us comic actors in the Orlando area to be on the opening crew. Well, the operation end of the business, had planned to do a big press event in December, and operations insisted that the ride be open for that press event in December. So they pulled, I think it was 12 of us off to one side, and they took 8 of us and trained them on the machine and worked with them on the show. So that we called them the Space Monkeys, because they were the ones who were shot into space before anyone else was. And they ran the ride for the preview in December, while the rest of us, they kind of rushed their training, while the 12 of us were in a room across the other side of the Magic Kingdom playing improv games for a month and a half. Then finally, once they were ready to go, they brought all of us over. All 20 of us were together in the theater, and we worked together on developing the show. And it was a real process. You've probably experienced Turtle Talk. This was the same kind of process, the same kind of mechanism for Turtle Talk, but it was going to be a lot more advanced. You'd have multiple characters. You'd have multiple performers working on the same show at the same time. They were going to have a turtle as a rather amorphous form of animation, but here we were going to have monsters who were going to be portraying emotions, working with props, working with set pieces, and all that entailed. So, and they had a rough idea of what the script was going to be, but it was written by Imagineers. Imagineers are people who have wonderful experience in art and design and technology. Live performance is not their strong suit. And so they brought in these 20 comic actors. A lot of us had theme park experience. Everybody had been performers and could do voices. And so we kind of collaborated on creating the show as it eventually started. But in that process, in that 5 months that we spent before we opened, we had a lot of chefs. We had consultant writers come in. We had the Imagineers. We had a guy from Disney Creative Entertainment. There were a lot of chiefs, and there's a lot of information to get down. And so a lot of the stuff that was a certain amount of time was spent spinning our wheels and learning dealing with a lot of stuff that wasn't going to be important. And finally, we got the thing up on its feet, and all the consultants and all the Imagineers and all the technicians went away. And it fell to the 20 of us performers to make this thing work. And that's when it really took off. I loved that show, and I love doing the show, and the mechanism that they use for the monsters is a delight to play with. It's just the greatest toy you'll ever want to have in your life. And we had a great time doing the show. You got to play with very, very talented people, and I love the characters, and there was a real chance. The show is not as improvisational as you might think. And I think they could do a lot more with the show than they have done. They kind of play it pretty safe with the material, but it still is a joy to do, and now we had a great time.
can I ask one question on that? Which is with regards to the acting of the show. What is the protocol for the voices? Do they go through a process so you're not actually doing a voice, but it creates a voice? Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but that's not how it works. No, we do whatever voices we do ourselves. We're working with a live mic on a headset, and the show that you're watching in the theater is 1/10 of a second behind the show we're doing backstage.
Wow.
So in that 1/10 of a second, the computer syncs up our voices with the lips. It's an automatic process. So we don't have to worry about lip sync. The computer does that for us. It's an interesting thing. When we started work on the show, long before we opened, they brought in the lady who is in charge of all Disney studio voices. She oversees all the animation. And she worked with all of us, and for all of the characters, she wanted us to have multiple voices for multiple combinations, and we all had to be able to have these voices, and she was very demanding about this, and everybody worked very hard to make her happy. But the thing that you'll notice about Pixar cartoons, the characters, for the most part, do not have character voices. They have very normal voices. They sound like normal people. And with very few exceptions, they don't sound like cartoon characters. They sound like people, which is one of the reasons it's easy to relate to them.
Yeah.
So when we hold on a second. I have the world's worst ringtone.
I don't know. I'm not convinced.
We've got a new show music, I think.
I don't know what it was, but I was bopping away.
So that was what we wound up doing. The characters wound up coming out a lot more real and a lot more close to ourselves, with the exception of the Wazowski character, the little boy. Only certain one of the ones of us could do the little boy voice convincingly, and so those are the people who always do the third act.
I always wanted to be that guy, Ron. Was it a particular seat? It looked like it was the same seat that got picked.
Not at all. Not at all. We can see any seat in the house except the very front row and the very back row. Mm-hmm. So no matter where you sit, there's a chance that you're going to be that guy. Generally speaking, and I never picked that guy. It was always the guy that fell in the other booth. But generally speaking, you want to be somebody who looks like they won't really want to get into the show, who kind of seems above it all. And we're going to pick somebody like that because then it becomes funny when he gets drawn in and he has fun with it. So daddies that are there for their kids are quite often picked for that guy.
Have you ever had anyone get upset about being that guy?
Fun. That's one of the fun things about the show. Sometimes you'll call on somebody, you'll have them up at the top of the show, you say, is that guy? And then the person will decide, I'm going to be a smart aleck, and I'm going to move so they can't find me. And they'll move over a couple seats down. The problem is that we can see them. We can see them moving. And we move the camera too. And so we can follow them around. We have a lot of fun with that when that happens.
I'm not surprised. That's the thing that's always kind of got me, because I've seen Turtle Talk, and in Disneyland Paris we have Stitch Live, which is Turtle Talk but with Stitch effectively,
right?
And there's a bit more of a story, because you have to help Stitch escape from the ship at one point. So you have to like shout things, and there's like a map and all this kind of stuff. Whilst Turtle Talk is more questions, but yeah, I mean that technology fascinates me. So before I ask Chris to, because I know he's got another question, when he mentioned about Monsters Inc. Laugh Floor, I did get slightly concerned. I have to ask this just so I know. Did you have any involvement with Stitch's Great Escape?
God, no.
Do
Okay.
you think he would admit to it?
True. Because let me. I'll kind of just back on that a second, because I love Stitch, but that ride sucks completely.
Yeah.
I like Stitch live in Paris. That's pretty good, but that Stitch's Great Escape is just terrible. Yeah, Chris. So you had another thing you wanted to ask.
I've got loads, but I'll hand it over to everyone else in a sec. But I've got one last question I wanted to ask, because it's
all right, Columbo.
Just one more question. You did work for Universal Studios for a while, I believe, back in the early days. I just wanted to know what you got involved with in the early days, and whether you did work at all on Halloween Horror Nights.
I wrote all the shows for the very first Halloween Horror Nights, which was called Fright Nights.
Now someone tells me.
My first job at Universal was I was a Universal Studios tour guide in 1976 out in California. This is back when the tour was all there was. There were no rides, no shows, and the tour was 2.5 hours long. You had to know everything there was to know about movies, and it was one of my dream jobs as a child, was to be the guy who sat up in the front of the tram and talked for 2.5 hours. I loved that. I did that for about a year. The next time I was at Universal Studios was in 1980. I was hired on the same day by both Disney and Universal. For Disneyland, I was working at the Golden Horseshoe Review, but at Universal, they were opening a $3 million theme restaurant called Womp Hopper's Wagon Works. It's a big Western-themed show with great barbecue food, live country Western music, which was very big back then. And the theme was, it was a wagon factory. And being run by the biggest crooked car dealership you've ever seen in your life. And this real sleaze of a salesman named C.L. Womphopper. I was working at Magic Mountain doing a street show, doing a medicine pitch, selling Grandma Spillikin's Herbal Cure and Indian Elixir. And Jay Stein, who was the president of Universal Attractions, saw me and said, "This guy's perfect for Womphopper." So in 1980, I came over and opened Womphopper's Wagon Works, and I was creative manager there for about 1.5 years. This is how long I lasted with Universal. Then I came to Florida to do Dreamfinder I left Dreamfinder in 1997, and I went to 1987. I'll be all right. And a couple of years later, I was on the opening crew of Universal Studios Florida. And I was in charge of the celebrity lookalikes. I was the creative manager for them. So I hired and wrote for the Laurel and Hardy, the Blues Brothers, the Marx Brothers, Marilyn Monroe, W.C. Fields. All of those characters were under me. And I started with writing and managing them. And then about the middle, after a couple of years with them, we had the very first Fright Nights. And I wrote a couple of the shows for that. We did a Chainsaw Massacre in New York City, which was kind of a funny show, and we did the show at the Bates Motel with the Blues Brothers, Norman Bates, and Beetlejuice. And that was the very first year that they did the Halloween.
Well, Chris, I don't think there's any better segue we're going to get tonight than this following one. So we have a new sponsor for this show, and for the next... Yes, we do. And for the foreseeable future. And again, Mr. Ripley, it goes over to you.
What happened to Wendy?
Wendy's still our sponsor as well. But what I'm saying is, whilst Wendy would go in this section, I don't think you'll get a better segue ever in any podcast episode possibly ever again as good as this one right now.
Yeah, but I don't want to talk about my book. I want to hear what Ron's got to say.
Tough, you've got to talk about sell your book. Ron sold his book, you sell your book.
Complete Survivor's Guide, Halloween Horror Nights, goes through all the history of Halloween Horror Nights, plus a guide for the coming year. Buy it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, blah, blah, blah. It's good. Amanda does loads of videos about it, so it's got to be good.
I love this book, but I'm a bit heartbroken that Nick's got an autographed copy and I haven't.
Oh. Okay, I'll send you one, don't worry.
Sorry, I'll just bring my copy to our tour.
I'll sign it there in person. There you go.
Sign it twice.
There you go.
Now, Ron will sign his book if you buy it from the publisher, but that's not in person. Like, he's not going to come to your house, hand deliver it, and sign it. This is an invitation to get a signed copy in person. You don't turn that down.
But I want to know, Ron, when you were a tour guide back at the backlot in Hollywood, did you have any funny stories or any celebrity encounters or anything?
Didn't see a lot of celebrities. One of my favorite moments, two favorite moments actually. About halfway through the tour, we would get everybody off the tram tour, and we would go stand in front of one of the dressing rooms, and we would talk about the star that was in that had worked in the dressing room. There was nobody in there at the time. Then we'd walk them through, and then we'd take them through the soundstage. Well, this all took place at what they call the crossroads of the studio. It was right in the middle of everything in the studio. It's a big open area that everybody had to crosses through. So I was standing in front of the Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton dressing rooms. I was up on the porch there, and I've got my microphone. I'm talking to this bunch of people below me, and I'm talking to the people, and I'm saying to them, you keep an eye out because you're going to see, we could see a star here, which is not exactly true, but you say it anyway. And this beautiful brunette comes walking by, and I said, you there, ma'am, are you a star? She goes, well, I'm an actress. I said, may I ask your name? She says, Yvonne Craig. And I was a big devoted Batman fan back in the 60s, and Yvonne Craig was Batgirl.
Oh.
And I said to everybody, ladies and gentlemen, it's Batgirl! And everybody went crazy. That was one story. The other story is I was standing in front of Lucille Ball's dressing room this time, and behind the crowd, way across the crossroads, were the offices of Edith Head, who won 8 Academy Awards for costuming and is an icon in the business. In the film The Incredibles, the little lady in that was modeled after Edith Head.
Yes, I heard that. Yeah.
And her offices were behind it. It was a big, beautiful, fashionable-looking building. It was actually used for used in the film Gable and Lombard as Clark Gable and Carol Lombard's dressing rooms. So I'm standing there, and I'm pointing out the building there, and I'm saying, those are the offices of Edith Head. And as I say this, the door opens, and Edith Head comes walking out. And this is quite a distance from us. And she goes over to her little pargo, or little electric cart. And I said, ladies and gentlemen, Miss Edith Head. And she turns around, and she had the scarf on. She threw the scarf dramatically over her shoulder and struck this magnificent pose on the side of the electric cart before she got in and drove away. So that was the extent of it, yeah.
I love that backlot. I mean, I know people get teary over Disneyland, but that backlot for me is just where it all happens.
It was that way for me too. Unfortunately, the backlot today does not much resemble what it was back then when it was really being used. They've moved all of Colonial Street, where all the homes were from the different television series. They moved that up on the top of the hill, and in doing so, kind of ruined the quality of the buildings. That was now then used for the Housewives, Desperate Housewives series. And of course, they had the big fire that destroyed all of New York Street and Brownstone Street, and all that's been rebuilt. And so, when you drive down the street, you can say that this is the kind of sets that were being used, but you can't say these were the sets that were used.
We have a term for that in the UK. It's called Trigger's broom.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, it's basically this character called Trigger. He had the same broom for 30 years, but he had 5 new heads and 6 new handles. But it was the same broom.
I was thinking, I've not heard that term, and I was like, yes, I have.
We went to California for a holiday a couple of years ago. I think it was about 2008, and we were there for 2.5 weeks, and we thought we're bound to see some movie stars. Surely we're going to see some movie stars. And the whole 2.5 weeks, the only person who saw any movie stars was my daughter, who we just came off the tram tour in Universal, and they'd been filming Desperate Housewives on the set. So we saw, the unit set up with the lights, and even though it was broad daylight with the lights and the cables and all of that, but the set was empty. And as the tram pulled in, a couple of the Desperate Housewives came out of a door, jumped in a limo, and were obviously heading back to the set. So we'd missed it. They'd been at lunch or something like that. But my daughter did see them, and I thought, damn, been to Hollywood for 2.5 weeks, haven't seen any movie stars. We're in the airport going back, and I'm in the queue for it's like a fast food place, and the guy from Gladiator, not Russell Crowe, but his sidekick, the guy who betrays him, Quintus, he's in the queue beside me. He stood right beside me, and he orders. I can't remember what he ordered, but I turned to him and I said, "Shouldn't that be a Caesar salad?" and he looked at me like, "What?" I went, "Gladiator." And he went, "Oh." And my kids just like shriveled up. Dad, no. True story.
Oh, brilliant.
Oh yeah, if we're talking about stories that make people shrivel up, then remember to join the unofficial DAD Army page, because if some people have already seen the photo. I uploaded myself there this weekend, but it's definitely too embarrassing to share publicly, so you have to find our secret group to see that one. Amanda, I know you had a question to ask as well that ties into what we're talking about now, actually.
Yes. So you mentioned that in your book you have a guide to writing and creating shows, and I know that you had a hand in creating the Blues Brothers show at Universal. Yeah. So what's the process like? How does it look to take a movie and turn it into a show that's not like just a shortened version of a movie, if you get what I mean? So to make your audience want to watch it so that it's something different but still encompassing the general theme of the movie.
That's a wonderful question, and it's central to what one of the reasons I wrote the book, because it's easy just to regurgitate the things in the film. And too many theme park shows, they'll take a film and they will just tell the same story that was in the film. And it winds up becoming like a memory checklist for the audience. They just look at it and go, yeah, that was in it, that was in it, that was in it. And it reminds them of the film, but it doesn't capture the film. For the Dreamfinder, all right. For the Blues Brothers, these are outrageous characters. And most people knew them from the movie. And I knew that my job was to capture the feeling of the movie. The characters had to be rebels. They had to be disrespectful. They had to be funny. They had to be idiocentric. They had to be iconoclastic. They had to be all these things. And I had to create within the audience the desire to dance in the streets, because that's what happened in the movie. Everywhere the Blues Brothers went, they had people that the normal people around them would spontaneously react in some kind of violent way. And I knew that that was the point of the show. So when I first got in there, the first thing I did with the Blues Brothers, we put speakers on their car, and we had microphones in the trunk, and they'd park someplace, and they'd take them out, and we'd have the music tracks playing, and they would sing the songs. But I wanted to do something more. I found a setting, it's the same place they are now, on Brownstone Street, and there was this kind of platform where it looked like some construction workers had been working. It was right next to a brownstone set of stairs. It was a perfect setting. And I could have just put the microphones up there and the Blues Brothers would have sang, and management at Universal would have been very happy with that. But I didn't want to do that. I wanted to create a scene with a big purpose and to give the audience a role in things. So I started the show with this fella coming home from work, and he's dressed in a chef's outfit, and he's blowing a sax. And he's just come walking down the street, improvising on the sax. And he comes up, and his wife, who is based on the waitress character from the Blues Brothers movie, meets him and says, "Get upstairs and start doing such and such for me." And he said, "Well, no, I got a gig in Chicago. Some friends of mine got me a gig in Chicago, and I got to go and I got to play with them." And she sings a song. She sings "Stand By Me" just for the crowd, because all the crowd's there, and she sees them. And finally, he says, "No, I got to go with these friends." He says, "You're not going anywhere. You're staying here." He says, "Well, my friends are going to take care of this." And as he says this, we hear the Peter Gunn theme. And around the corner, a block away, here comes the Bluesmobile, slowly cruising along. And by this time, the audience, they're there to see the Blues Brothers show, but there's been no Blues Brothers. And so they're ready. They're primed for this. Blues Brothers come up, and they meet the guy's wife, and they try to make a case for why he should come with them to Chicago. And she doesn't want him to go away. She doesn't want any of this. She's angry as hell. And so she breaks into a song about, "Don't piss me off." The song we use is "Don't Nobody Bring Me No Bad News" from The Wiz. I didn't use the Aretha Franklin song from the movie because I don't want people comparing the scene to the movie. I want to get the same feeling, but I want the audience to pay attention because this is something they've never seen before. So we sing "Don't Nobody Bring Me No Bad News," and just like in the movie, the Blues Brothers spontaneously start doing choreography to that, because that was one of my favorite things in the film. And then finally she finishes that song, and the Blues Brothers finally make their case, and she says, "You don't know nothing about the blues," and now they cut loose. Now they sing Soul Man and a couple of songs, and by the time they finish this, they can go down the audience, and the audience will follow them in a line, dancing up and down the street, having the time of their lives. Because they've been there and seen this scene, and they're become a part of it. The show is about the Blues Brothers and their influence on the people around them, and they've seen all the elements that they love from the film. Since I left the park, they've had a number of different directors who've come in and, quote, fixed the show. They took out most of the plot, and they changed the songs to be the ones that the same ones that we know. And it still works. It still works. Still an effective show, but it doesn't have a lot of the same emotion, the same effect in the audience, which I find a little sad. But that's an example that I use in the book when I tell the whole story in detail about how we created that show. And you're right about the important thing is not to recreate the movie, but to recreate within the audience the feeling of the movie. Exactly. And to make that a personal experience for them.
So, what I'm surprised about there, Ron, is that you chose to focus on that element of the film when working on the show, and not the motorway chase.
Well, how are you going to do that how are you going to involve the audience in the motorway chase? I mean, if you look at the new Fast and Furious attractions that are in Hollywood Universal and are coming out here, you could do it that way, but then it's not the Blues Brothers.
That's barely the Fast and the Furious from what I've seen. So, yeah, maybe that's why. Besides, my job is to ask why things aren't being done, not explain how they're going to be done.
Of course.
Chris, I know that you. Paul P-Dubs, I know you had a question, so I'll let you have your question.
Ron, I believe you were there at the opening day of Disneyland.
Yes, sir. July 18th, 1955.
What I was going to ask was, obviously you've been there over the years from when they first opened to working through it until recently. How have you seen the parks change? Do they still feel the same to you, or does it feel like a different place now?
The change has been it's been a twofold change in the scale and complexity of the park, and in the audience that they're playing to. Remember back in 1955, audiences Disneyland was based on television. They brought to life the themes from the Disneyland television show, from popular television shows. 2/5 of Disneyland was devoted to Frontierland because of Davy Crockett, Gunsmoke, Wagon Train. All those TV shows was very, very big at the time. And the audience was simpler. They were simpler people. They hadn't been exposed to all the technology. They hadn't been exposed to all the massive film franchises that we have now. And so it was a different matter of entertaining those people. As the park grew more and more advanced technologically, and the society became more and more sophisticated and more jaded, the park had to become more and more potent. And as Walt found the technologies to bring more of his visions to life, we got Pirates of the Caribbean and the Haunted Mansion, and it grew in that respect. Then one of the big changes was when Mr. Eisner came on board and decided that the purpose of the parks should be 20% annual growth for the stockholders. And so everything became a profit center, and we had to find new ways to make money, and that caused a lot of changes, primarily financial. But at the same time, more new technologies came along, more franchises came along, and the Imagineers, the second wave of Imagineers came in. These are people like Tony Baxter who were inspired by the original Imagineers. They took that inspiration and they created the next generation of Disney attractions. Splash Mountain, Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, Indiana Jones Experience, Space Mountain. All of these things started to come along, and more and more Imagineers actually moved outside of the parks and started working for other companies. That's where we get the people who are designing all the wonderful stuff for Universal Studios now. They're all former Imagineers. And the audiences continue to get more and more sophisticated, more and more jaded. Now you walk into the park and everybody's got a cell phone in their hand. Everybody's videotaping everything. They're not even looking where they're going. They're not even looking at what they paid to see. They're busy videotaping, which to me is just complete idiocy, but what are you going to do? And then with the way crowds are, and then the big change, of course, that in the last few years has been the internet. Every ride that you could possibly want to see is brilliantly videoed and put up on YouTube. And now the company has to deal with that. They have to create shows that are either absolutely verboten, you can't film them, or shows that are made to be filmed. One of the great examples is the new Frozen ride at Epcot Center. Is just a brilliant piece of work and looks great on YouTube. It makes you want to go there and see it. So there have been a lot of changes. For me, the big change is I was lucky enough to be working at Disneyland in 1980 at the Golden Horseshoe, and I got to work with the people who had worked with Walt. And it was a very different feeling around the park. People treated you differently. People treated each other differently. And I was at Epcot when Mr. Eisner came in, and a lot of things changed. And just in the way that the feeling around the park. You still have, because the parks don't pay that well, and because the work is so challenging, the people who are working there are the people who want to work there very badly, who need to work there. They have the spirit of Walt Disney with them, and they carry that with them at all times. And so the quality of the service, for the most part, has not changed. It's still people out there putting themselves out because they love doing it, because they love people, and they love the jobs, and they love the heritage of Walt Disney. So that hasn't changed as much as other things may have.
Wow.
Did you ever get to meet or see Walt Disney in the flesh?
Saw the top of his head one time. Shortly before he passed, I was visiting the park with my family, and I was about 13 or 14 at that time, and my favorite thing to do at Disneyland was to leave my family alone and go off by myself. And so we got to Town Square, and I said to my dad, listen, I'm going off by myself. I'll meet you guys over here later on. I got up on the second floor of the omnibus, and the omnibus was pulling away down Main Street, and my sister was running after the omnibus going, Ronnie, look, and she points to this cluster of people off to one side, and I look over, and I found out later that in the middle of that crowd was Walt Disney. So I saw the top of his head. I got to meet his daughter at the Disney Family Museum in San Francisco. I also met his son-in-law a couple times, and Roy Disney, Walt's brother, drove past me one day at CalArts.
Wow.
But Ron, that's why you're eminently right to play Walt's head. You've actually seen the real thing.
Literally seen Walt's head as well.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, part of it. Yeah, I never thought of that before. That's
not in the frozen state, but
no.
Still.
The thing is, if this was like the Further Adventures of Walt's frozen leg,
Yeah.
you probably wouldn't have been any good for the role. Let's be honest. But, as it's ahead. Now, all this talk, we've talked Disneyland, we've talked Universal, both sides, and Walt Disney World. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I feel I would love to have a trip. And if I was planning a trip right now, you know who I'd be doing that with, don't you?
I'd love to go around with you.
Wendy Pratt at Magical Journeys Travel, of course. That's who. Our third sponsor. If you mention... Tell you what, Ron, have you ever heard a show be more professional than this one? Don't answer that question.
It's not just professional, but smooth. So smooth.
Yep, smooth as crunchy peanut butter. That's us. And if you mention that you heard this ad on Dis After Dark, you'll get $25 off your deposit of any trip package. So don't be the one up at midnight trying to get your reservations at Be Our Guest, your fast pass for Anna and Elsa, or your fast pass, of course, at the Frozen? Yes, the Frozen attraction. Sean Connery there. That's the one. The Frozen attraction.
Frozen head.
That's why Sean Connery's not doing it. Then let Wendy take the sting out of that for you. You can find on the Twitter at WP Magic Journeys or at wpmagicjourneys.com. Yes, there you go. Now, we are running a little bit longer than not that I was hoping to, because I'm glad that this show's been as great as it has been, but there are a few things that have been happening recently I wanted to kind of touch on before we ended tonight.
Right.
Has anyone seen the success, in inverted commas, of the Big Friendly Giant, the BFG?
I'm going tonight.
You're going tonight?
Yep.
We don't get it in England for another 2 weeks. We get it just Finding Dory opens up next Friday, I think, in the UK, and the BFG comes out the week after. But it opened last weekend. It was July 4th weekend last week that it opened, and it's been a bit of a bomb, hasn't it? Really.
I have not heard that. I have not heard that from anybody.
The reviews of it have actually been very good.
Yeah.
It's been well reviewed, but it's been one of Spielberg's lowest openings in quite a while.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, look at the other thing. You got Finding Dory.
Oh, which is massive.
Now,
Massive.
Which is massive. And I mean, there's a lot of good stuff out right now. I firmly believe that we're in a kind of a entertainment renaissance, especially on television here in the States. And there's a lot of good films being made out there. So I will put it down to that. With films like the things that Spielberg creates, a lot of the things that Disney creates, I think it's more the long view that judges success than whether they top thing on a particular week.
No, I think you're right. I mean, whatever happens, it will do well on video. It will do video, yeah, because people still buy VHS tapes, don't they? It will do well on home release when it gets released on DVD, Blu-ray, and Laserdisc or whatever. But yeah, I think you're right. It's a very crowded marketplace at the moment. I mean, Independence Day, which were hyping to be one of the big big event films of the summer, that's also flopped quite badly as well. And I just think there's a lot of competition, but Disney have had, so this is Disney's kind of second notable bomb this year, because obviously Alice in Wonderland didn't do very well either, although that was not as critically well received. But at the same time, Zootopia or Zootropolis, depending on the part of the world you're in, has done massive numbers. The Force Awakens obviously was a massive success, and they've got Rogue One coming out later this year. So Disney, I don't think, are too bothered about this. I do think, though, going back to what I was saying earlier, that Pete's Dragon, which comes out in August, looks terrible, and I'll be shocked if that does any better than Alice or the BFG. But the other thing as well with the BFG, and we noticed this today, is that for a Disney film, there's not a single bit of merchandise available for it in the Disney store at all. There's nothing. We went into Toys R Us, other toy stores are available, and they had a cuddly toy of the BFG available from the books, but it's nothing to do with the film. Nothing to do with the film at all. And there's not really been much advertising for it. I think they weren't really gearing it to be a hit, to be honest with you. But you'd have thought Spielberg and Disney would have been a big combination. So it's strange why it's been shoehorned away. And like you say, Ron, Finding Dory has been massive, and I don't think anyone doubted it was going to be a big hit. So I'm not really sure what the purpose was of putting them in release so close together. Just a bit of a strange one to me, but there you go. Well, I hope you enjoy it, because I'm really looking forward to it, to be completely honest, and my daughter's looking forward to it when she sees the trailer for it. We put it on YouTube for her. She's excited. All right, she's only 3, but she can. If she's impressed, that's enough for me.
We saw the trailer. Thought it looked quite good. We saw it tonight actually. Thought it looked quite good.
That's what I mean. Like, I think they've done it as well as you could do that story.
Yeah.
So fair play to them. And I think, Chris, did you have something you wanted to talk about? Or was it Paul?
It was me. It was in fact, it was quite appropriate. We thought the rumored changes of Future World that have popped up in the last week or so, with the rumor of Guardians of the Galaxy going in.
Yes, I think every attraction has been rumored to be turned into a Guardians of the Galaxy show. Yeah.
Yeah, Stitch's Great Escape is going to be Groot's Great Escape, isn't it?
That would be wonderful.
It wouldn't be any worse, let's be honest. Certainly not. I mean, Guardians, I think you're right there, Ron, actually, about the fact that, yes, we had the talk of the Tower of Terror. Has that been confirmed for California? Or not?
No, I think it's still going round and round as to whether it's happening or not.
I hope they don't do that.
Yeah.
That's a bad idea.
I mean, the thing is, I love Guardians of the Galaxy, and I'm really excited about seeing Volume 2. But I don't really... I don't know how you can fit a ride like that into a drop ride, really. I think it'd be a bit odd. I don't see how it could really work. The other rumour, which is what's the Epcot attraction? Mission Space?
Well,
Energy Adventure.
And
Yeah,
also Mission Space. They said Mission Space is also going to be Guardians of the Galaxy.
Wow.
Yeah, I heard Mission Space as well.
Yeah, Mission Space came out. Mission Space came out first, and then the rumor seemed to change within about 24 hours.
So,
being
excellent. So Rocket and Groot's Energy Adventure. Yeah, I can see
Good
that
idea.
working. Very, very.
Bill Nye, the Marvel guy.
Nice.
I have a strict policy that I don't try to second guess the company. Because most times when we try to second guess them, like for example, Frozen is going to be a lousy show. It's going to be a terrible ride. It doesn't belong at Epcot Center. And then it opens and it's absolutely a home run, an e-ticket, a great show, an amazing show. And if we in the public don't know what we don't know. And so if I see the trailer for Pete's Dragon, yes, it looks different than the original Pete's Dragon, but I don't judge it. I wait till I see the film before I form an opinion. And because of the internet and it's fun to be out there and to give people opinions. That's everybody's a critic, but the problem is most of this criticism is spent before we actually see what the film is. Ghostbusters is going to be coming out shortly, and everybody's determined that this is going to be one of the world's worst films ever made, and they've ruined my childhood and all this other stuff. But the fact is, we haven't seen it.
And also, I was actually talking about this the other week, weren't we, about Ghostbusters? Because the thing is, it's ruined my childhood argument. The original Ghostbusters is still there.
Yeah,
it's not gone anywhere.
And delete all the previous versions.
Yeah. They're not gonna individually wipe your memory while you're asleep and think. I'm sure there was a film I remember from 1984 about Ghostbusters as well, but this is the only film I can ever remember now with these women in it. It still exists. It's still there. So I'm with you. You're right. Maybe we're being a bit harsh on Pete's Dragon. It's just it looks so terrible, and I'm not comparing the original to the new one because it looks like a completely different story. But it doesn't look like a dragon. It looks like a big furry creature, but it doesn't look like a dragon.
They decided to give him fur.
Yeah, I think that's the problem. That's my problem with it. It doesn't. I
know a bit about dragons, having worked with one, and I did a lot of research into dragons. Yeah, and I did a lot of research into dragons, and dragons can look just about any way you want them to look and still be a dragon.
I can guess why. They can do that. That's because they never bloody existed, did they? But that's another argument for another show on another day.
I don't know. I know a guy who says he's married to one, but never mind. That's a different episode.
Well, he's not on here to defend himself, so
no,
we can't really, or herself, so we can't really speculate too much. Ron, thank you so much for joining us. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. yeah, I know it's probably not it's a little bit different to other podcasts that you've done, other than the fact of it's so professional. But we hope it's been enjoyable for you. And before you go, if you just want to, plug your book or plug anything else one last time, that'd be great.
Well, keep an eye out for the further adventures of Walt's Frozen Head. It's going to be, by the time this airs, it's going to be too late to kick in for the Kickstarter. But keep an eye out. This is a terrific film. It's going to be a lot of fun for people. Then my book, From Dreamer to Dreamfinder, A Life and Lessons Learned in 40 Years Behind a Name Tag, is up on Amazon or any of the various services, or you can order it directly from Bamboo Forest Publishing. And I have so thoroughly enjoyed this, I can't tell you. I've done quite a few podcasts through the years, but this one has been a real standout for me with the questions and the attitude of all of you. It's been a total joy.
Ah.
Well,
Thank you, Ron.
I kind of take that as well as an amazing compliment. So, Echo and everyone else, thank you very much. But also I'd come back on if asked. So you've not officially said that. We can't hold you to it, but I'm going to kind of hold you to it, if that's okay.
Please do. I'd be happy to come back anytime.
Well, certainly when the film is coming, is getting nearer to release, we'll have you and Ben both back on, because I know Ben wants to come back on the show as well. So I think that'd be a nice double header. But it's been so entertaining, this episode. We do try and differentiate. I can't even say that word, so I'm not even going to bother. We do try and be a little bit different to other podcasts. We don't like to try and do the same thing, so I'm glad that you've taken it in that way. And sometimes with guests is a little bit of hard work trying to get them into the spirit of things and trying to get them into the flow of conversation. You, sir, have been an absolute delight in that regard, and thoroughly entertaining, and I hope that our listeners have enjoyed this episode as much as we have making it. So thank you so much for coming on, and we look forward to having you back on in the future. So thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Thanks, everybody.
And
Thanks,
on
Ron.
that note, we better say goodbye. So
Can I just say one quick thing?
you bloody well can, sir. Go on.
They've only got $655 to go to get it backed.
Oh, now
Yeah, it's
what time
during
does it
the
close?
show.
What
it's
time
been
does it
going up.
close? What time does it close?
6 hours from now.
Well, this show is going out in about an hour, if not sooner.
Oh.
So,
We need to plug.
So as soon as it comes out, we all link to it, we all tweet it, and everything like that. So we might not be able to get the whole money out there, but if we can just contribute a little bit to that and give it a final push, we certainly will do. So it'll be interesting to see what the final stats are. But in that case, I better end the show, otherwise I won't be able to get it out, will I? So if you want to speak to us, you can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/Dis After Dark. Email us at podcast@disafterdark.com. Websites www.disafterdark.com. Other places you can find us: Unofficial Dad's Army on Facebook. Look for the picture and the thing. You've got Ron's details, you've got our details. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week with another Universal After Dark, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's just say that,
Yeah.
and we'll see what happens in a week's time. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, Ron.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Ron.
Growing older is mandatory. Growing up is optional. Dis After Dark, the podcast that's nearly the same as all the others.